Good morning to everyone. This is the iMobility Forum webinar on human-machine interaction. Thank you for joining us. Before we start with the webinar's information, I would like to say a few words about the iMobility Forum. The iMobility Forum is a platform for all ITS stakeholders in Europe to develop, implement, and monitor work programs linked to roadmaps, international cooperation for the successful development and deployment of ITS. The iMobility Forum has several working groups on safe applications, implementation roadmaps, vulnerable road, and last but not least, human-machine interaction. The iMobility Forum today has decided to on the recommendations of the iMobility Forum working groups, and these webinars will be dedicated to topics of the working groups. The first one of the series of the webinars today is the human-machine interaction, and I would like to present the speakers of today's webinar. First, I would like to start with Allan Stevens. He is the Chief Research Scientist and Director in Transport in TRL, where he's going to present the DG Move Distracted Road Users project. The second speaker is Mr. Casto López Benítez. He is a policy officer of the Road Safety Unit of DG Move. And lastly is Mr. Christian Gelau from the Federal Ministry of Transport and Digital Infrastructure, a policy officer. He's going to present to us the iMobility Forum Working Group HMI final report and also the recommendations. The webinar will follow with discussion with the speakers and also answering questions of the audience. And it will also finalize with a summary and common learnings and future steps. And this will be provided by today's moderator, Mr. Allan Stevens. So now I would like to give the floor to Allan Stevens, where he's going to present a bit the whole structure and the iMobility.
Okay, thank you, Lena. Hello, everybody. My name's Allan Stevens from TRL. I'm co-chair of the iMobility Working Group on Human-Machine Interaction. I'm very pleased to be invited to this first iMobility webinar. So the principal presentation we have this morning is the work and the final report of the working group on HMI. And that'll be presented by my co-chair, Christian Gelau. But we also know of very many other projects and activities which are related in this area. So we've taken the opportunity to introduce brief presentations of just two of these as well. So before Chris starts, we'll have an update on the Cooperative ITS platform from Casto López Benítez of DG Move, and particularly the Working Group 9, which is looking at implementation issues, which includes HMI. But before that, I was going to start with a brief, broader perspective on the distracted road user study that we've been doing for DG Move. So the project, I'll just do a brief outline of the project and then discuss a little bit about distraction and in particular the impact of new technology such as information and communication systems on distraction. I'll describe two project workshops which we've had and then begin the discussion on interventions that may help to reduce distraction or the impacts of distraction. So the project that we're doing is called Study on Good Practices for Reducing Road Safety Risks Caused by Road User Distraction. It's managed by TRL and we have co-partners from TNO in the Netherlands and RAP. I'd like to thank also our project officer, Suzanne Lindahl, who's been very helpful to us and very happy to disseminate the results of the work so far. I should say that this is work in progress, so we're not going to present here any conclusions, but just go through something of the process and some of the thoughts that we've had in this area. So to outline the project, the background and really the motivations for it is to improve road safety from the point of view of road user attention to the driving task. Of course, there's already been a lot of work on distraction and inattention. We wanted to build on that. This study particularly has focused in two areas rather than try to tackle everything. One of them is technology. Technology, of course, is a source of distraction, such as information systems and communication systems, mobile phones, but also is a potential mitigator of those distractions. The other point of this study, which is perhaps different from others, is that we are focusing on all road users, so pedestrians and cyclists, and their activities and distractions, as well as drivers. So the project has a number of tasks. Task 1 is exploring the concept of distraction and inattention. Task 2 has the specific focus on technical such as mobile phones. Task 3 and Task 4 look at interventions or other measures that might help the situation. And then finally, there's a Task 5 on costs and benefits of the various interventions. And we've also had, as I mentioned, 2 workshops, and there's various reports as output as well. So in terms of Task 1 on distraction, there's many different concepts in this area, but essentially distraction is diversion of attention away from the activities required for safe driving or safe use of the road space to some other activity, object or person, and that may be for a driver inside a vehicle or outside of the vehicle. We've also found a very helpful taxonomy or organization which has been developed by an EU, US, Japanese trilateral group. It's part of the group looking at connected and automated driving. So the HMI group there has formed a taxonomy starting from the more general concept of inattention, which can be decomposed in 2 ways. The insufficient attention route, such as where the driver is not paying attention or is drowsy, which is the top half, or the bottom half is the misdirected attention, which includes driver distraction. So we already have some useful basis for this. We also know that the risk of a distraction-related crash depends on the timing, so when the distraction occurs, the intensity of that distraction, the frequency of distraction, and the duration of the distraction. So looking at particular technologies, we know that particular devices cause drivers or road users to be distracted, and here we would look, for example, at mobile phones and information systems, which have many advantages in terms of the road, the way the road operates and the road systems, but also there are problems of distraction and of a rather uncoordinated approach sometimes. And this is not only devices built into vehicles, but also mobile devices brought in by drivers, or indeed used by cyclists and other road users, such as pedestrians, for example. So one particular new example of technology coming in is head-up displays. So there's a number of factors there, and I think the research in this topic is not particularly well advanced. We don't understand very well the impact of these devices. Smartwatches is something which has also recently been a focus, and also may well have an impact. But we could also look at other new forms of interaction, such as gestures, which are becoming available in some vehicles, and speech interfaces, of course. This is another way which drivers interact. As well as the desk work by the consultants, we've held 2 workshops which have been very useful in initially scoping the work and then also focusing on the interventions or mitigating measures and different stakeholders involved in road users. So these workshops have a second workshop recently taken place. In terms of interventions, which is tasks 3 and 4, this work is underway now, so there are no conclusions here, but just to give some examples. So in terms of actions and tools for alleviating distraction, we can look at legal approaches, such as sanctions and penalties for example, using a mobile phone while driving. Of course, there are the enforcement issues to consider there. HMI guidelines is another way, and that's the focus of the 2 later presentations. We've also identified driving for work policies, so that's policies for professional drivers which could make an impact, and things like education and training of road users. So these are examples of interventions in the general sense. In terms of technical approaches to alleviate distraction, mitigating measures, technology also helps with enforcement, such as cameras to monitor road behaviour. There are cell phone blockers, which are technical measures to actually stop mobile phones working within vehicles. We could also look at things like workload managers to help manage the interface that the driver is using. And things like driver assistance systems take part of the load away from the driver as well. So in some senses can be regarded as mitigating measures for the effects of distraction. So these are examples, but the project is ongoing, and the next steps are to have more work on the interventions, particularly classifying the mitigation measures in various ways, and to understand better how these measures might apply to different types of road users. And then we're also looking, or will be looking, at the costs and benefits of the interventions to understand the likely benefits of them, and things like acceptance. So looking at how these can be brought in or not. The final report is due in October, and so this is very much an interim report, although it's very open for people to contribute, and certainly if anybody has particular views of way forward, then either they can get in touch with myself or the project officer. So that's the end of my presentation, which provides a rather general form of look at distraction. We're now going to go on to a second presentation, which is from, I give the floor to Casto López Benítez.
Thank you, Allan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Casto López Benítez. I work in the Road Safety Unit of the Directorate General for Mobility in the European Commission, and I there follow issues related to technologies rather than behavior, although behavior is one of the main aspects of road safety. But today what I wanted to do is to report to you on the discussions we've had within the working group, one working group of the Cooperative Intelligent Transport Systems platform organized by the Commission. So I will give you a little bit of background of the work of this platform concerning road safety, and then in particular on the topic of human-machine interaction. So okay, so very briefly, the Cooperative Intelligent Transport Systems platform has been organized by the Commission to bring together stakeholders in all fields of action to try to establish a vision, a common vision, and a roadmap for the deployment of ITS in the European Union. And the work of this platform will be developed till the end of the year. It has started at the beginning in 2014. It will cover this year. It was organized in 11 working groups, and in particular one of them, which was entitled Working Group 9 on Implementing Issues, discussed various topics. In fact, it was a working group a little bit with odds and ends of everything. But one of the main aspects discussed there with road safety. Now, the perspective is the deployment of CITS. What are the opportunities and threats in terms of road safety? And of course, road safety is a very big topic, but we wanted to look at it from that perspective. And what's clear is that in addition to the contribution of cooperative ITS to driver assistance technologies, generally speaking, the deployment of CITS means that the driver and the vehicle will interact in ways that are more complex. So there will be information and more complexity, probably, and these may create some safety challenges. And it was from that perspective, and in order to focus the discussion, because we had really little time to go over a long list of topics, we decided to concentrate on human-machine interaction, and in particular on the European Statement of Principles on Human-Machine Interaction. Knowing, of course, that there was also in parallel the group on HMI within the iMobility forum discussing exclusively this topic. But we thought it was important to look at this also from the perspective of CITS in a more integrating way. And also, just for your information, we discussed all the topics related to CITS and road safety, like driver training and awareness, or what are the challenges resulting from the coexistence on the road of users equipped with CITS technologies and others that will be not equipped, a situation that is likely to last for many years. But today I just wanted to focus on human-machine interaction. So without any more introduction, let's go to some of the issues, conclusions that we reached within the group. So, on the scope of the European Statement of Principles, there you will see I have noted down that we agreed that an update, a revision of this document is needed. And then, next to that, that it will be very important that this revision does not result in preventing innovation in any way. So that would mean, and I would probably come back at the end, that we think that the way forward is an update of the current document in its current form, so in the form of a recommendation, in the form of guidelines. Now, on the scope, two important questions that were raised. One, should power two-wheelers be included? They were excluded. The group was not very conclusive on this. We finally thought, well, since the interactions between the power two-wheeler and the driver are very different, maybe it's not within this to be included, but they should be considered in some way. They should not be left completely outside in the future. And then driver assistance systems, which are now also excluded in principle. This should be reconsidered. We should see whether this has to be integrated with any other interactions between the vehicle and the driver. Some more words on the scope. Now, the deployment of CITS technologies will enhance the possibility to get information from various sources, from the infrastructure, from other vehicles, many more than today. So we need these information flows need to be somehow integrated, taken into account together, and at least, if not all of them, those that are safety related. And that also brings us to the fact that we think that those devices providing information or interacting with the driver should also be seen in an integrated manner in some way, at least in what concerns road safety. And also, we think that all forms of interaction, and this has been mentioned by Allan in relation to the study on distraction, should be included there, and we have new forms like Headup displays, speech control, gestures, haptic feedback. We should try to include in the guidelines these different ways of interaction between the vehicle and the driver. Okay, another important point from the safety point of view that has been discussed many times. I don't think we can say we have come to any new ideas, but we think we should advance in this line, is driver workload. We think some of the tasks or activities of the driver are unsafe, and the driver should not be allowed to perform them. And this probably can be better clarified in the guidelines. Maybe that's to be discussed as well, a list of unsafe applications, to look at the possibility to limit simultaneous tasks by the driver, and then to try to address the task load or the workload for the driver and to limit it in some way. I'm not talking about quantitative limitations, but guidelines to determine at least a minimum level of a maximum level of workload that can be taken by the general driver. And then to provide the driver only with information, at least in terms of safety, that is relevant, not redundant, not conflicting. This links to what I said before about the integration of the different flows of information. And finally, on the nature of the information that the driver is going to be provided with, the information that is safety relevant should be provided, we think, in a manner that is consistent, so that different drivers in different vehicles can interpret this information in an efficient way. And of course, that means some form of a standardization. We have to see how this can be moved forward. I think it's also being discussed in the Safe Apps working group of the iMobility forum. And then again, and I insist, this concerns safety information mainly. The information should be prioritized on the basis of its nature, content, on the position of the vehicle. All of this, the context has to be taken into account in order to provide information to the driver. Now, a more technical issue, which is probably not to be dealt with necessarily within the European Statement of Principle on HMI, but is the fact that if information needs to be provided on the basis of the context and in a form that takes the priorities into account, safety priorities, then that means that some kind of harmonization of message codes needs to be considered in order to allow for that to happen. And then that means some kind of central control of those information flows is needed in the vehicle. Of course, this reflection is not about the interaction itself, but how those information flows have to be taken into account together in order to provide the driver with information that is relevant and necessary in the precise moment. Just to conclude, and I think the main idea of the people participating in the group is they agree that the update of the European Statement of Principle is needed, and it should be an update keeping its current form, guidelines, recommendations that can be of use for stakeholders and the industry, but without limiting innovation on this type of systems. So thank you, that's all for me.
So Casto, thank you very much for that. I do appreciate you sharing this information. I think there was some information that wasn't broadly known, and so I think it may also generate a few questions. So if people do have questions, I'd encourage you to type into the box on your screen, and we'll try and get to some questions at the end of the session. But before that, I'd like to give the floor to Christian Gelau, who's my co-chair in the iMobility Working Group HMI.
Yes. Thank you, Alan, for this introduction. Just say I'm co-chair of the working group HMI and from the German Federal Ministry of Transport and Digital Infrastructure, and they're working in the unit of intelligent transport systems and automated driving. Well, I had the pleasure together with Alan to chair the iMobility Forum Working Group HMI, which was re-established in 2013 after meeting with the co-chairs, moderated by Ertico, and with the former head of the unit, Pavel Stelmachik. And we decided how to deal with the issue of HMI and also with the Safe Apps working group, which is some overlap, let me say, with this HMI working group, and it was decided to re-establish a working group which was dormant for 5 years, or for 4 years at this time, and to consider the European Statement of Principles. This is an EC recommendation which was published first in 2000 in the official journal of the European Communities, and after some evaluation measures by the member states, it was decided to revise the document. This was mainly done in 2005. It was first published in 2006, and there was some criticism and discussion around a footnote, and then again it was published in 2008, which is a version which is valid today. Well, this is a long time ago, and there was now a clear need for the working group HMI to uptake their work again, to review the state of the art and the progress which has been made since 2008, to discuss needs for international harmonization and determine the need for an ESOP, European Statement of Principles, or briefly ESOP update. Next. Okay. I already mentioned that the work started in or this meeting where the decision was made to re-establish the working group or to revitalize the working group. This was in 2013, and the work started then in late summer, in summer 2013. We had 3 meetings together with the working group HMI. Participants came from the automotive industry, research institutes like TNO, BUST, but also service providers, safety organizations, and so on. Well, and we submitted them or finalized the report in autumn 2014, received some review and feedback, and submitted it then in March 2015. Meanwhile, it has been revised and accepted by the iMobility Forum Steering Group. Okay. I'd like to briefly summarize the results and the recommendations given. The report is about 25 pages with recommendations, but I think I do not have to discuss every or each single recommendation in detail, but just to give an overview of what the spirit of the document is. Well, first, the ESOP should be developed with an enlarged and refined scope, and Castro already mentioned this. Within the working group there was a basic agreement on the scope or elements of the scope, particularly on vehicle classes, functions, and HMI technology. The OEMs or vehicle manufacturers made a very clear point that they support the current ESOP approach. They could explain that they use it, but they also made a clear point that for at least some principles, specific compliance criteria are counterproductive. And nevertheless, we had discussion on this issue. This is a basic issue discussion, and we need such discussions. There were also some participants interested in research towards some more quantitative measurement approaches. The final report then makes technical recommendations, but also we developed some ideas about the process of ESOP development, which really should be a living document. Well, first to give an overview of the general recommendations given, there was an agreement that the scope of the ESOP is a little bit inconsistent and should be reformulated in terms of functionalities rather than systems. You can discuss about systems, include, exclude systems, like, for example, the discussions ADAS, information systems or not, which types of systems to be included or excluded, maybe it could be resolved if one says, well, we decide to include functions in the scope, but not specific systems. Maybe it's a point of future discussion. The current ESOP structure, which is for each principle, brief description of the principles, some explanations, examples, comments on applicability, compliance, maybe by reference to standards and definitions, is also recommended for future ESOP. So please keep the structure. This is good. Then there was some discussion about the introduction of high levels of automated driving, which are expected to require, or may be expected to require, the ESOP to be updated accordingly. This should be also considered these aspects, what the requirements of automated driving are to the ESOP, and last but not least, separate from but building on the ESOP, industry might usefully develop certain certification procedures for apps. This may be done by the SAFE Apps Working Group, but this is not an issue for the working group on HMI. Well, next, some recommendations which concern research and maintenance of the ESOP. Approaches in other regions of the world, particularly Japan, maybe Korea, and the US should be monitored, but the correspondence between the ESOP and other approaches should not be addressed. So we should not adapt our ESOP to developments in the US, but consider this, take it into consideration, maybe learn from it, but not try to find correspondence. The ESOP, I mentioned already, should be revisited at least every 3 years to review new technology and functions. And some research issues were identified. This is compatibility and configuration of multiple in-vehicle devices, the integration and dialogue priority management, boundary conditions for secondary task performance during different automated driving modes, and of course the naturalistic or real-life use of devices and their link to road traffic safety. I already mentioned that some recommendations were formulated on the process of ESOP update and revision. The ESOP should now be revised by a team of technical experts. This should now be done taking into account of continued feedback through the working group HMI and wide consultation through the iMobility platform. So this is now technical work, hard technical work, which should really be done also by the HMI experts. Nevertheless, they need feedback. It is considered as most recommendable that the revised ESOP achieves the status of an EC recommendation to be recognized as a development of the existing ESOP. The existing ESOP has a status of a recommendation, and there was agreement that the future ESOP should keep the status of a recommendation. Finally, also multiple stakeholders and users of the ESOP can be identified. An ongoing process of dissemination and awareness is recommended. Well, I will look at my clock. I can continue with some more specific recommendations. Yes?
Yep.
When there's time left. Yes, vehicles and fittings. Cars, trucks, and buses should continue to be included in the scope. This was agreed on, and as Castro already mentioned, powered two-wheelers should continue to be excluded. The iMobility working group in vulnerable road users is invited to progress initial HMI guidelines for powered two-wheelers incorporation of onboard and rider technology. Maybe I can explain this a little bit. The HMI problems or issues for powered two-wheelers are completely different than for passenger cars and trucks. This is simply because the physical load of a motorcycle driver is higher. The task of stabilization of the vehicle has to be performed. This is not the case for car driving, and the different channels of perception have a different weight for vehicle drivers, so this is not comparable. You may recommend something for vehicle passenger car drivers which is completely irrelevant for the powered two-wheeler and vice versa, so it was decided to exclude them. The ESOP does not need to explicitly address specialist emergency vehicles. Maybe it could be clarified that these is maybe not true when they are used for normal driving. Finally, it was recommended to keep the situation whereby inbuilt aftermarket windscreen mounted and pneumatic devices are all in the scope of the ESOP. The ESOP should be, and this is the most important method, technologically independent as possible. Some suitable definitions for all these options and possibilities should be provided in the ESOP scope, and also this would be work of small expert teams. Yes, recommendations on functions and technologies. Information communications functions are certainly within the scope of the ESOP. I think this is very clear. Warnings or advice can also be interpreted as some specific type of information. What's critical is if these warnings are time critical, so, or if they are not. If they are not time critical, you have the problem of distraction. You may or should not be distracted by a warning which is not critical, and where you have time left to decide. The issue becomes completely different for time-critical warning, which should attract attention, and this is the other issue. So you cannot design a time-critical warning for not to be distracting. This is not the purpose. Finally, one sentence concerning ADAS. Driver assistance functionality is certainly excluded from the ESOP scope, but should be applicable to positively influence the design of certain aspects of driver assistance systems, such as status message and situation-dependent information. So this is also what we said about functions and systems, not to exclude, simply exclude some types of system, but focus on functions. And as I already mentioned, the ESOP should be as technologically neutral as possible, and thus cover all modalities of HMI technology, since relatively little is known about newer technology, such as voice control system, head-up displays, night vision, and haptic elements. The possibility remains that the ESOP may not be appropriate for all new technologies. Finally, something on recommendations, on verifications. It's also clear that the principles do not apply to all situations. When you go through the principles, you will see always find examples where some are not applicable. There was consensus within the working group HMI that verification of the whole in-vehicle HMI is a very complex issue and was never intended to be addressed by the ESOP. So this is a multi-dimensional problem, and you cannot simply sum up and calculate an average value to say that's my HMI design, but you have to make a really complex evaluation of multiple dimensions. So I think this was a brief overview on the work done by the working group HMI and the report provided and submitted. And this is why I would like to close my presentation. You will see slides. I've used material provided from the UK, from around the steering wheel on the right side of the vehicle. But I think we can now proceed to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Christoph. And we are nicely in time, so we do have time for questions. We've had some questions come in already, but if people now have additional questions based on the presentations or any other points they want to make, please type them and we'll get through as many as we can. An early question we had was the availability of the various documents. The ESOP 2008 is a publicly available document, and you can find that through Google or through the iMobility website. The HMI working group report is also available on the iMobility website. I don't believe there's any documentation from the Cooperative ITS platform yet. That's
not yet.
No, okay.
It will be once approved, so to say, in the plenary meeting, and I think everything will be put together and published.
Okay, so that's at the moment we have the slides as a summary. Thank you. So we've had a number of questions concerning implementation. One of them was that with the information and communication focus on ESOP, we've had a lot of experience of those sort of devices. But concerning future technology, such as interface technology and driver assistance, the question is really about the maturity of that technology and whether we're actually ready to develop guidelines for them. Anybody got any thoughts about that? The maturity of the technology. Do we know enough about technology or about driver assistance systems?
I think we can answer this question when we consider functions, not the systems. I think this was a very important result of the working group HMI. I think it's difficult to give a general answer, but to say something about the maturity of driver assistance system of the world. I do not know how many driver systems are meanwhile on the market. I do not have the overview to assess the maturity of ADAS with one simple sentence. This is not clear, but what we can, if I can come back to the point I made in my presentation, this was to say, let's say, focus on functionalities. Let's focus on functionalities and not so much on the type of system which is providing some functionality. Maybe you can answer the question this way.
Do you have any comment on that? I think the Cooperative ITS
reflection is that I would say that for systems that act only in case of an emergency, in terms of safety, we don't see that much of a problem. I mean, they are mature, and once they act, the driver is not supposed to do anything, or it is too late. But I think in the future, I don't know how far is that future away, we will see systems that partially take the control of the vehicle to help the driver. And where I see the interaction, where I see some issues in terms of safety, is interaction with those systems where the control has to be transferred to the vehicle or from the vehicle to the driver, and how that is going to happen. And I don't know, in that, for instance, in that area where we can talk about maturity of the systems, there I think there is work to do.
Thank you. Yes, and my contribution would be to say that although technology has been developing very quickly, the human driver or the human road user hasn't been developing at anything like the same rate, and the same principles apply. And so what we try to do, and certainly have tried to do within European Statement of Principles, is to develop ideas that we think are as technology independent as possible and based on the performance of the human driver or road user. And so although we can always be caught out, we can always be updated by some new technology. The idea is to be as technology independent as possible. Okay, another question is about implementation. The ESOP is implemented as a European Commission recommendation, which is endorsed by ASEA, as Chris pointed out. So the question is, what is the incentive for OEMs to comply with the ESOP, given that it's not a obligatory requirement? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I would say the car manufacturers, they want to provide new products, and they want to attract the consumer, and they want them to buy their vehicles. In that sense, there is a reason to offer more functionalities, but these functionalities have to be accepted and seen as useful by the user. And of course, all manufacturers of vehicles want their vehicles to be safe. I mean, they want them to be safe. So in that sense, if complying, if we can use the word complying, and following these recommendations, these guidelines, they can be relatively convinced, sure that they are doing the best that they can do at this moment in time with the current knowledge. I think that's a driver enough for them to apply.
Okay. Another question is, we've had is any schedule for development of the European Statement of Principles? So when will there be another update?
Well, when the Commission gives the mandate, now we have submitted the report, and I think the Commission needs some time to evaluate it and then decide if they want to follow the recommendations or not. They're free. These are recommendations, so I can look at Castro.
Yes. So well, there is no schedule so far, but the next step would be certainly to set up a group of experts that would, I mean, this time draft a new version of the European Statement of Principles, and then once that is done, the next step is to have it adopted as a Commission recommendation, which, I mean, it adds to the formality to make it really more visible and more important, but that's a separate step. So the first step would be to draft a new version, and for that we need to set up a group of experts, and there the organizational arrangements have not been established yet, so really I cannot tell you when that is going to happen.
Okay, watch this space. We have a personal participant here. So would you like to introduce yourself and ask a question?
Yes, I'm Claudia May from ADAC. Just coming back to the group of experts that will be set up in the future. Do you have any information on who would be part of the group of experts? So the composition of the group?
I cannot give you any details on that. So that is something we have to decide in the Commission later on. But of course, it would be to have people that have experience in terms of expertise that can really draft a new version of the document. So it would not be a group. It would be relatively small, I would say, and then of course, once the new version is drafted and in the process of adopting it as a Commission recommendation, there is a consultation and a way. So, but I would say a small group of experts. How are they going to be selected? I don't know.
I have a personal question for Christian Gelau, which we've discussed a few times, which is how effective guidelines that are concerned with the interface and design are when there's also an element of driver behavior which has to be taken into account. So it's always possible for drivers to misuse something. That's my point. And how can we try to have a more rounded view of safety?
Well, I made this point also during the discussions in our working group. Must distinctions with the formal status of a document and the formal status of the ESOP is recommendations or the legal status. I always try to argue that the ESOP independently of the status, should focus on design, only on the design of HMI technology or functionality in the car, not mixing up with some, let me say, principles of behavior. Yes, this is something completely different if you say what a driver is allowed to do and how to design a product. And I think the ESOP in its original version was only made to say or to define goals of good product design. And of course, we all know that we are living in a system of vehicle, the environment, and the driver. And the driver is, of course, using a product. But I think the ESOP is not the right document to say what a driver is allowed to do or not. This makes the road code, but not the ESOP, and I want to replicate this. The legal status of a guideline, a recommendation, or even more is something different, and we should carefully avoid to mix this up.
Yeah, thank you very much. We've had, I think maybe this will be our last question. It's concerning, well, it's making the point really that the driver interacts with a whole range of functions, and it's the combination of those functions which make up the driver's experience. And so it's not possible to separate them into very distinct items. And the question, I suppose, is the extent to which the ESOP covers the combination of functions that may be brought together. So we're just trying to work out the question. If somebody wants to rephrase it, yeah. Pirko, I think you send it. If you could rephrase it in a way we could answer it.
Yes, well, I think it's the question is some of these functionalities are not necessarily independent from each other. They interact amongst themselves. So is there a way to consider those?
Yes, I think you made the point about whether there's some sort of workload manager or way of integrating the functions, particularly when you have multiple cooperative systems.
I do not have an easy answer to this question, but I think only the question underlines the necessity to revise the ESOP because this has not been addressed by former versions.
Okay, I think the time is coming to the o'clock, so I think we should close there. I'd like to thank Casto López Benítez from the European Commission and Christian Gelau from the German Ministry, and I'd like to thank you all for your participation and for your questions. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.